Hey, how you doing?
My 20-gallon long is moving on to its next part of its life. I had some minnows in there. They lived for about 5 or 6 years and now they're gone. So this tank is moving on. So I just put in a layer of soil in it and a layer of sand. And yeah, it's looking good.
So whenever we have a tank that we want to start up, we need to think about what goals we have for that tank. So, it'll be like, are we going to have plants, floating plants, rooted plants, what? And then what kind of fish as well? Or what kind of invertebrates or whatever else we may want to keep, all those exotic things. We have to think about what the end of the setup should look like. So we have to think about water parameters, substrate, and all that jazz. Now, in this here 20 gallon, I am going to be ending up with my cories in it because they're happy enough on the gravel, but I think they would be even happier on sand. So, and I want to keep them by themselves as well. So I'm going to eventually, not right away, put the cories in there. So it won't have any rooted plants, mostly Java fern and Anubias and floating plants. So when I put in a layer of soil on the bottom, I didn't put any supplements in because it's not necessary. I'm not going to be rooting any plants. I put the soil layer in just in case later on sometime I might want to put in rooted plants. Then I don't have to redo the whole aquarium. I can just put in some root tabs. So yeah. Now when it comes to the sand layer, so I talked about the soil layer last time, and I will put my substrate playlist in the description for you if you want to see all the past discourses on substrate that we've had on this channel. Today we are going to talk about the sand cap and maybe even talk about gravel. So when we talk about having a sand cap, what is the purpose of the sand cap? We have two reasons to put a cap of sand on top of the soil. One is to prevent soil from floating off into the water, and it also, I think it slows down also the movement of soluble substances from the soil into the water column. Maybe that's not true, I don't know. I haven't thought that one through yet. And I haven't done any experiments on it yet, so this is just off the top of my head. I'm saying I think that a sand cap would slow down the movement of soluble materials from the soil into the water column. Makes sense to me anyway. So the other purpose that we have for a sand cap is to prevent things from the water going down to the soil level and causing problems. When the sand acts to keep the soil down, it is acting like a cap. So it's keeping something in, it's acting like a cap. The other function that we want the sand to have is that of a filter. We want it to filter out any uneaten, undigested food that might fall down to the bottom of the tank. So why do we want to filter this out? It's because we don't want the food to get in between the particles of the soil and become putrid, rotten. It will rot there. Okay, so we want to keep that on the surface. Some of it will be re-eaten. Like Father Fish always says, food gets eaten again and again and again. That's a fact. The food is going to get eaten again. So whatever falls on the ground, or if your animals poop it out onto the floor of the aquarium and it's only half digested, it can cause problems with your water parameters. So we don't want it to be just getting trapped somewhere anaerobic. That's really going to cause problems. So the sand now is acting like a filter to filter out the coffee grounds from the coffee. You guys know I love my coffee, right? So yeah, the stuff stays on the top and hopefully gets dealt with somehow. And then the sand and the soil will stay clean. Now for the sand to perform these two functions, it has to have the right particle size. So, to be a cap, seriously, it's not so important what particle size it has, but to be the filtering out the uneaten food from falling down into the soil, that requires it to be of a certain size. Because, of course, if the spaces between the particles are big enough to hold the food, then that's not going to filter the food out, is it? So in this tank here, you just saw me put sand in it. That sand is pool filter sand. Get it? Pool filter sand. So it's the perfect thing for using in your aquariums. Now there are other sands, yes, many of them much more expensive, and other people have talked enough about those ones. I don't use those. I just don't. It's not the cost of it that I mind. I just don't. I don't know why. So yeah. So here I have pool filter sand, and the particle size on that is 0.45 to 0.50 millimeters in size. So they're guaranteeing that the particles are that size, and that's the perfect size for filtering out things, because that's what it's being used for, right? It's being used in the pool. If you have a backyard pool or even an indoor pool, you want to filter out the algae and people's hair and whatever else falls into the water. This will do it. Now, on the other hand, you don't want the particles to be too small, because the smaller the particles, the more likely it is to become compacted, and then it will be way too difficult for your plants to root into it. So in my old 55, I had half an inch of play sand, and at first the plants did have a lot of trouble rooting into that half an inch. But I had some problems with the weight. This is an old house, so we had some problems with the weight on the floor, and I just put in nothing else, just half an inch of sand on the bottom. And the plants struggled for quite a while. But as the mulm became built up, and the mulm is able to get in between the little spaces, so it softens up the sand, and then the roots can take hold. And of course, mulm is the compost of aquariums, so they started taking off, and they grow quite well in that tank now. But that took a couple years, so you don't really want to be struggling with that for 2 years. It's not fun. Now we come to that topic that nobody wants to talk about, gravel in your tank. Eesh. So yeah, we have to agree that gravel is not the best substrate. In fact, I would go so far as to say that you shouldn't use gravel unless it's on top of something else that's doing a job for you. Because the gravel actually doesn't make a very good cap. It doesn't keep soil in that well, and neither does it do a good job of filtration. So it's neither, it doesn't perform either function that we're looking for in this cap. But if you put your gravel on an under gravel filter, some of your problems will be solved, many of your problems will be solved. And also, if you put only a thin layer of gravel on top of your soil and sand setup, your 1 inch of soil and 2 inches of sand, and then maybe half an inch of gravel, that should be all right. But if you do that, you have to make sure that your water is very well oxygenated, because you don't want there to be any anaerobic action in that gravel at all. Food is going to fall down into the gravel, and if it becomes anaerobic, it will cause problems for you. So be careful when you're doing gravel. Make sure that the layer is quite shallow, and make sure that your water is very well oxygenated. So what does the oxygen do? The oxygen is what keeps the correct kind of bacteria working on your wastes. There's always going to be some kind of waste in your aquarium, but if you have the right bacteria and the right conditions for those bacteria, then everything will be fine. So I've had this gravel in this tank for quite a while. I've used this gravel before, and yeah, so as long as I keep my oxygen levels up, it gives me no trouble at all. Now, the reason I like the gravel, I like the look of it. One thing. First reason is I like the look of it. That's the main reason. But the other reason is that this gravel changes my soft acidic water into something that's more suitable for keeping fish, especially for the farm-raised fish that we have now. So the parameters are quite a bit higher than what I get out of my tap, because I live in the Pacific Northwest. Tap water here has 0 kH. The pH is like 6.5, and the GH is just barely registering. So it's not really that great for keeping fish. You can do it, but it's not easy. I think it's much better to have a little bit of pH, a little bit of KH, and a little bit of GH. This is what my gravel does for me. Some of it gets dissolved into the water, and then I have the perfect pH of 7 point something, but I use strips, so it doesn't really tell me exactly how much more. It's only a tiny bit more than 7. The KH is, I believe it's 2, and the GH is about 7, something like that. So of course it fluctuates a tiny bit when I do some any kind of addition of water, or if I change a little bit of water or something. So it will fluctuate a tiny bit. And of course the plants take up some of those minerals, so that would cause your fluctuations in your parameters. Okay, so that's why I use gravel, for the look and for the chemical reaction that I get from it. If you're a beginner, it's maybe better not to use gravel, but yeah, because if you want to change your parameters, you can always use crushed coral. It does the same thing. But if you have a gravel that you really like and you want to use it, just use it sparingly. That's all I can say. Make sure that you have a good soil layer and a good sand layer down, so they're doing most of the work, and the gravel is just a cosmetic thing, like half an inch or just to cover, just barely cover, that's all. You want that oxygen to be going between the particles of the gravel, the little pebbles that are in there. You want the oxygen to flow through and keep that thing sweet. So if you're a gardener and you know about composting, you know that we have to dig our compost over every so often to keep it aerated, right? Or else it goes rotten. So yeah. So we don't want rotten stuff to be in our tanks. So we better keep it oxygenated. And that's how I deal with gravel in my tank. Now, like I said before, I have a playlist of all my substrate videos, and I will link that down in the description box for you. At the same time, I want to thank everyone who has subscribed in the past couple of months. Thank you so much for watching and for subscribing. And thank you for watching today's video. And I will see you next time. Bye.